Hello and welcome to my new video. I am Safi and today I'm here to bring you my August wrap-up. And of course, my beautiful neighbors that aren't going to be my neighbors for very long, either because I'm going to eliminate them. No, it's because I'm moving. I'm not planning on taking out anyone, although I am kind of evaluating that right now. Because, of course, I sit down to film this and I decide that it's the best moment to start loading a truck with logs and make a lot of noise. This neighborhood is usually extremely quiet. And then today, suddenly, everyone is just out and about doing noisy things. There were some people literally playing like Celine Dion and Enya super loud, like right outside. Excuse me? Does this look like the right day to be playing that? Apparently, for them. I guess I just have to hope that you don't hear it too much. And I also hope that they're going to be done soon. Because it's a very loud, very annoying noise. But yeah, anyways, we're not here to talk about the noises I'm hearing today. We're here to talk about the books that I've read in August. And in August, I've read like 25 books apparently. So I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm not going to talk about the details of all of them. That would take me forever and I don't remember them. So I'm just going to talk about some highlights, I think, and just mention the rest. A lot of them were either manga volumes or short stories or novellas, so there wouldn't be too much to talk about anyways. So yeah, as I said, I'm just going to mention the manga volumes that are like in the middle of series and that I don't need to go in depth about. And I'm just going to mention the other books that I've read that are either novellas or part of series or that I just don't remember much about, honestly. Because that happens too. When you read a lot of books each month, there will be some that just don't stick. Let's start with the fact that I've read from volume 3 to volume 10 of Chainsaw Man this month. And that was an experience. I love Chainsaw Man. I've loved most of the volumes, although not all of them have really stuck, I would say. My favorite one of those I read this month was probably, what was it, volume 8. Volume 8 because they have like a trip to hell, and that's one of my favorite things to read about, especially if it's obviously in manga or graphic novel format, and therefore it's also visual. I love that. I don't want to spoil anything about the series, so I'm just going to leave it at that for Chainsaw Man. I don't have physical copies of a lot of these books because I borrow a lot of them from my local library, and a lot of them I also read digitally. So yeah, then I will try to put the picture over here probably somewhere so that you see what I'm talking about. I've also read these 2 volumes of the Wayward Children series, which I've also mentioned in my first video as one of my favorite series, which I have not read the whole series yet, but I know it's going to be a favorite when I finish it. I loved the first 2 so much that it doesn't even matter if the rest aren't up to my expectations, because the first 2 are just forever going to be favorites. So yeah, as I said, I've read these. This one comes first, In an Absent Dream, and then Come Tumbling Down. And In an Absent Dream was my favorite of the 2. I gave this 4.75 stars. Like, of course now there would be also like a motorcycle passing by. There's never anything of the sort, I swear. This is usually extremely quiet. They've just chosen chaos today. But yeah. Okay. And is it stopping right under my window or something? Unbelievable. this was great. I loved it. And I'm not going to talk about any of the plot because I don't want to spoil anything that has happened. But this one's the one about Lundy and the Goblin Market. I ate it up. Loved it so much. As I said, 4.75 stars. Almost perfect. And then between In an Absent Dream and Come Tumbling Down, I actually read Juice Like Wounds, which is a short story prequel to In an Absent Dream. Now, I'm not going to actually talk about that one because it would spoil certain things, I think. But it was interesting and heartbreaking. Like how Sean McGuire can write heartbreaking stories in like 30 or less pages or something is incredible. Anyways, Come Tumbling Down was one of my most anticipated ones of the series because it has two of my favorite characters as protagonists, Jack and Jill. It was good. Don't get me wrong, Sean McGuire can do no wrong. But it wasn't great. It wasn't a new favorite. I think I mean, I still gave it 4 stars. But compared to all the other books in the series, pretty much, apart from number 3, Beneath the Sugar Sky, they're up there. That one I didn't love because I just did not love the setting, I guess, or the characters in it. It just did not work for me. I swear this person with the motorcycle is just going back and forth in the street right here. Are you done yet? Yeah. Come Tumbling Down wasn't up to my expectations, but it was still good. It was still nice to see Jack and Jill go on their little adventures or whatever, and murder and stuff. I've also listened to the audiobook for Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell, and I gave that 4 stars too. I would not be able to tell you much of what it was about, honestly. It was kind of forgettable, unfortunately. I found it kind of creepy in the beginning, but then it just kind of lost me, and I have to admit, I think I kind of zoned out a bit towards the end. But I still gave it like 3.5 or 4 stars. I don't remember, but something of the sort. It was fine. It would be probably a good horror read for winter since it was set in some very nice winter landscape. Okay, so now I will go into the highlights, which I'm hoping to be able to speak a little bit more about. And I decided I would try to start from the books that I've enjoyed the least and go up to those that I've enjoyed the most. So to end on a good note, you know. The book I liked the least this month was, unfortunately, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. Me and Stephen Graham Jones just don't get along very much. I wish I could love this, but unfortunately I just didn't. And the same goes for most of his other works. My favorite one of his that I've read was The Only Good Indians, which I actually gave like 4 something stars to and actually really enjoyed. But everything else just did not work. I read My Heart is a Chainsaw and it was okay. I did not love it. I don't think I would have finished it if I hadn't had the audiobook. And this one was probably my least favorite by him. Unfortunately, I was really hoping to love it, but no, it was a miss. This is written in some sort of memoir style from the perspective of a man who used to be a teenage slasher. I did not love it. I could not get behind the writing style, and I did not care for the characters. I felt like maybe the memoir style, I don't know if it worked very well. I think I would have preferred to see things happen in real time and not know how it would end. Then maybe that would have kept my interest a bit more, but no, It just didn't work for me. Let's move on. Next is Killing Stalking Volume 1. And I just didn't really get it. I don't think dark romance is really for me, unfortunately. Not that I've read much dark romance, but I did not like this one. There were a few things that were borderline problematic. They use the R word every now and then, which is something that just gives me the ick whenever I find that in books. I guess I just am not a huge fan of reading about extremely toxic relationships. The relationship between a serial killer and the guy who stalks him. It just wasn't for me. I mean, I'm not saying it was bad, just not my thing. Next is Hate to Feel by Chandler Morrison. This is an extreme horror novel, which, yeah, I do read some extreme horror too every now and then. I don't know if you can see, I've got Gone to See the Riverman here. I've got Full Brutal by Christopher Triana up there on my bookshelf. I have Dead Inside there as well. Don't ask questions about that, please. But yeah, I tend to love his books, and Hate to Feel just wasn't it. I think this was my least favorite Chandler Morrison that I've read so far. I think that it's because I really did not like the first 50-60%. This, by the way, is the story of a guy who is an office worker, despite the fact that he's very rich, apparently, and doesn't really have any need to work to make money because he has enough money to support himself anyways. At work, he falls in love with a colleague of his who is unfortunately already married, and they strike up a relationship, and then things happen. I don't know how much of this would be a spoiler to say, so I'm not going to go more in depth into it, but just the fact that it's an extreme horror novel should tell you something. The book opens with a scene in which he is dismembering an entire family. I think I'll leave it at that. It felt like it took way too long to get to the horror. It was way too dragging. It could have been way shorter. So that's why I only gave it a 3.5. Next, I read The Ring, or Ring, I guess it's actually called, by Koji Suzuki. I read that on my Kindle. I actually kind of enjoyed that. I had heard not great things about it, and it was actually pretty fun. I'm aware that there are a few problematic things that are being said in it, but it's a book that came out in 1991. So I just think that they still maybe weren't aware of how to talk about certain themes. It wasn't done maliciously, I don't think, so I don't want to fault the author too much for it. But yeah, just be aware. There are some issues in this book. But anyways, I was expecting this book to be way more horror than it was, to be honest. This was more like a paranormal investigation type of novel, which I wasn't expecting at all. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the story, but anyways, it's a story about this videotape, and like everyone who watches it is going to be dead in a week. That's the gist of it. And the main guy, of course, is who is a journalist, by the way, of course, watches the VHS and knows for a fact that people have died because of it, and so he just has to figure out how not to die pretty much, and goes on a trip around Japan to find clues and find who made the videotape. It was interesting. I'd recommend, but check the trigger warnings for this one. Next, we have The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I've been reading a lot of these older horror novels because I really want to watch these classic horror movies that I've never watched. But I want to read the books first. I feel like if I don't read the book first and I just watch the movie, then I'm not going to want to read the book. Yeah. Well, anyways, I really enjoyed The Exorcist. I'm pretty sure y'all know what it's about. Demonic possession. It's basically the blueprint for any book or movie about demonic possession that came after it. It was incredibly interesting to see how it was structured, and also the movie follows the events of the book very accurately. There were no huge differences. The book just goes a bit more in depth with the backstory and the characters and the events that are happening, and of course the spooky scenes are maybe even more intense in the book because they're so descriptive. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you read it if you have enjoyed the movie. Next we have actually a physical book this time. We have The Eyes Are the Best Part in my beautiful special edition. This is a book by Monica Kim. It's her debut novel apparently, and it's a book about a woman who is kind of obsessed with eyeballs. And I mean, look at those sprayed edges. Aren't they beautiful? And the end papers, oh, they are actually like stunning. I love these. I would have loved if this specific end paper had been the cover for this book, because the cover is cool, but the end paper is just so much better. This book is basically about a girl who everything is going wrong for her in life in the moment at which the book is set, and she kind of reacts in a bit of a strange way, let's say. She becomes progressively more and more unhinged and more obsessed with eyeballs, and it just spirals into complete madness. I really enjoyed this book. It has very interesting and good commentary on race and on class and on social issues. I'd definitely recommend this one if you're looking for some horror about unhinged women. It was great. I just wish that the ending was a bit different. It felt a bit rushed. It felt a bit, I don't know, too easy of an ending, and a bit anticlimactic maybe. So that's why it didn't get 5 stars. It was an excellent debut, but yeah, it was about 4.25 stars, I think. And I will be reading anything else that Monica Kim publishes. Next we have another physical book, another beautiful one. This is The New Soul Park Jelly Massacre by Cho Yun. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm so sorry if I'm not, but look at that cover. It's stunning. I mean, what else can you say? And the inside too is just ridiculously pretty. And the back, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm not saying I bought this book for a cover, but I kind of did. And if the previous book was unhinged, this one is next level. It's absolutely crazy. I love this one, by the way. Also, I think I also gave this one 4.25, or maybe it was 4.5. I don't remember, but this one is a book all set pretty much during the one day in which the Jelly Massacre happens at New Soul Park. And it's told in a very interesting way because we follow the same day, but told from the perspectives of a different character in each of the stories. And each of these characters are connected in some way, some more than others. There's a chapter told from the perspective of a cat, and also a chapter told from the perspective of a sentient jelly. I'm just gonna leave it at that. This was great. Loads of body horror, loads of unhinged things that happen, loads of fun. Read this if you like carnival horror and body horror and jelly, or not. Read this if you hate jelly. I think you'll have a good time. Next, Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This was a very surprising experience, actually. I didn't think I would love this as much as I did. This has a pretty low average rating on Goodreads as well, and so I was thinking that it would just be fine. I read it because it fulfilled the buzzword readathon prompt for August, which is to read a book with the word like in the title. I wasn't aware when I picked this up that I had already done so, because I read Juice Like Wounds by Shannon Maguire before this one. But yeah, I'm glad I read it anyways, because I loved it. It's a story about a woman whose father was a serial unaliver. I don't know if I can say the other word here. I notice people usually tend to say unaliver, so I'm gonna say that. And she goes back to her childhood home to help her dying mother, and things happen. There's some very creepy scenes in here. It's haunted house story, but also a story about family traumas and toxic relationships and grief and the different ways in which you perceive people, if that makes sense. I really, really love this. It made me emotional, and it also gave me the chills in some point. And that's an achievement. That deserves pretty much an extra star just on its own. There aren't that many books. With the amount of horror books that I read, there aren't that many really that actually make my heart beat a little faster. This one did it. So also, it's beautifully written. I would totally recommend this if you love stories about haunted houses and serial unalivers. So next we have a bit of a weird one, considering everything else that's been on this list so far. But I read volume 2 of My Dress Up Darling. And yeah, that's totally not like anything else that I've mentioned so far. But this was adorable. I really loved it. It was so cute, and the drawings were just amazing. Let me just find the name of the author. Shinichi Fukuda. Shinichi Fukuda, I think. I don't know. Hopefully it's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it's a cute love story between a really, really hot, popular girl and a guy who sees himself as a bit of a loser and who is extremely introverted and awkward around women. So not my typical read, but I was just intrigued by the covers for My Dress Up Darling 1 and 2, and I just picked them up and read them, and they were surprisingly good. I just can't wait to read the rest of this series. Next book that I'm going to talk about is Foe by Ian Reid. I read this. This was the first book I read in August, so I might be a little foggy about it, but this is a Black Mirror type story. Very surreal, almost absurd, set in an undefined future. And it's more sci-fi litfic than horror. So be aware of that going into it. This is not a horror novel. But it's still extremely unsettling and extremely uncomfortable. This is a story of a married couple who live by themselves in the countryside, and then one day a man shows up and tells them that the man in the couple, Junior, has been selected in this sort of lottery for possibly being sent to a space colony. But not Henrietta, not his wife Henrietta. So that kind of causes some trouble. He's like, wait, what? I did not sign up for this. I don't want to go. I don't want to forsake my life for possibly years to go do this thing. I want to be here, right here with my wife. And that's totally understandable, but apparently it doesn't have much of a choice. This book blows your mind. Like, it seems like nothing happens all the way until the end, when he's supposed to be sent, possibly, maybe, to this colony. And then it just proceeds to completely shatter your brain in the last few pages. I love this. This book just really, really blew my mind. And I think that in order to really understand this novel, one would have to actually read it twice in a row, because the final pages just completely change your perspective on everything that has happened up to that point. Not gonna say anything else, but just, this book made me so uncomfortable. Read it. We have just a couple more to talk about. One of them is Rosemary's Baby, which, again, I've been reading horror classics to be able to watch the movie afterwards. And I was so surprised by this one. Rosemary's Baby, by the way, by Ira Levin, in case I haven't said that. But yeah, this one was surprisingly good. I really, really loved it. It's a pretty well-known story, but if you don't know, it's about a couple who moves into this building in New York called the Bramford. They decide to have a baby, and during the pregnancy there are some really, really strange things that happen. I did not know anything, basically, just going in. I thought this story was going to be about a baby, but it's really not. Be prepared for that. If you want to read a story about a creepy baby, this is not it. This was surprisingly good because, well, it was written in 67, I think, 1967. And it felt so modern. It felt like something that could probably be written today. And by a man writing from the perspective of a pregnant woman. It was just extremely well written, I think. Surprisingly so. And it had really, really good feminist commentary, at least in my opinion. I think that the movie was also great. We watched it yesterday, and it followed the book pretty much exactly. Almost no variations at all. Just a couple of things were omitted from the transition from book to movie. Like, there's a point in which Rosemary goes on a little trip to a cabin that wasn't in the movie, and also a couple of small details here and there, but apart from that, it was pretty accurate, which also surprising. I feel like most movies coming out today that are based on books are just very different. So I don't know, it's nice to see that this one was following the book very accurately, because the book is great. So the movie was also great, I think. I would definitely recommend. Of course, check the content warnings for this one as well, because there's some pretty heavy topics in this one as well. So make sure to do that. And lastly, my favorite book of the month was PTSD Radio Volume 3. Now, this volume is actually probably my least favorite of the 3 that have come out from this series, and yet it was still my favorite of the month. I adore this series. I love it so much. It's probably going to be in my top 5 of the year, if not top 3. This series is incredible. This series has some of the creepiest imagery that I've ever seen. Let me just find something in here that I can show you. But just like, yeah. Excuse me. That's so creepy. Just, you're sitting on the toilet and then suddenly something comes up from behind you and you see the reflection on the floor. That's so creepy. This kind of imagery, like, wow. Look, I would love to tell you what this is about, but I'm not entirely sure. And yet it's it's one of my top 3 books of the year. It's a very, very strange story. It's in all 3 volumes. It's not told in chronological order, but in very, very short episodes spanning quite long time. You get to see the same characters sometimes as children and as adults, and strange things are happening to them. All of them kind of see these strange entities. I don't know, it's just like an ominous atmosphere from beginning to end. Everything is extremely creepy. There is this divinity that might or might not be the cause of these strange apparitions. Forgotten ancient divinity that they have been trying to eradicate, and of course it gets upset and makes weird things happen. And there's like a lot of body horror and a lot of things to do with hair and with like faces in the dark. And if there's something that I find extremely creepy and that always gets me, always manages to scare me, it's faces barely visible in the dark. Like in movies, in books, in pictures, that will just get me. Unfortunately, I've heard that the author is or was ill and might not continue the series. I hope he gets better and that he continues, because this is some of the best horror manga I've ever read. And as I said, I am pretty big on horror manga. So yeah, I can't recommend this enough, especially if you love Junji Ito like me. Read PTSD Radio and enjoy the creepiness. I mean, even just the cover is super creepy. So yeah, and to wrap this up, to wrap up the wrap up, I guess, I'm just gonna show you what I'm currently reading, because I've started Fresh Dirt from the Grave by Giovanna Rivero, and it's a collection of short horror stories from Bolivia, I think. I'm enjoying this, although the first 2 stories were excellent. The third one I kind of skimmed because I did not enjoy that one at all. So it went from 2 that were almost 5 stars to 1 that was basically a DNF. So yeah, I'm a bit wary of the other ones, but it's a pretty short collection. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get through it pretty quickly. Yeah, this was everything I read in August, and hopefully I will be reading some more great books in September, and hopefully you have also read some great books in August. Let me know what your favorite book of the month was. I would love to know that, and especially if it's horror, of course, but even other things. I'm always looking for recommendations. Yeah, and well, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!